Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the Titanforge. Sorry, not episode 2. Episode 8? Tentacles, what episode are we?
8.
8? Okay. The number 2 was in my mind because there are only 2 of us this week. There's only myself and Tentacles. Tentacles, as you can see if you're watching one of the video forms here, still doesn't quite have a working camera set up at your new place.
I have a working camera. It's just
working internet.
Working internet.
Yeah. So as you can see here, we've got an artist rendition of Tentacles riding a horse. That will be our main our main way of seeing Tentacles this week. So what are we going to do this week? This week we are going to talk about Azshara's Eternal Palace. We are going to talk about all the boss fights, and we'll give you a quick guide to their abilities on Heroic. We'll not get into the Mythic mechanics just this week. We'll do that over the next couple weeks. So this week's the main thing is going to be just a kind of a flash guide to Azshara's Eternal Palace. We're also going to talk a little bit about some dungeon scaling changes, beguiling, that sort of stuff. We'll spend a few minutes there too. Trell, our other host, unfortunately not able to be here today because he's also moving. Now, this is the second co-host of mine that has been moving in the past couple months. So you guys you've exhausted your moving excuses for the next couple of years until you can realistically say that you were moving again to avoid getting in the show. Yeah,
I do have grandparents that I can sacrifice off for the show. So.
Oh my god, Tentacles, that's that's horrible. Oh no. Anyways, how's your week been, Tentacles? How's the first week of beguiling been for you? Have you gotten a good amount of keys done?
Honestly, it's been awful. I've only done one key. I think I have straight green parses because I can't stay connected on any boss fight. So I've been flamed and called Gandalf the Grey occasionally, which is rather amusing, but would prefer if that was not the case.
Gandalf the Grey parse, love it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, but yeah. So I mean, it's been fine though. I'm 57 on my neck, I think. So had to step up and do some islands, so we had to power through.
Nice. Yeah, my shaman. So I missed a week of patch stuff, so I'm a little behind. I'm only 56 on my shaman, up to 53 on my rogue though, so I'm trying to catch up both those characters.
Wait, are you playing your shaman as your main for this raid? Holy shit! Okay,
shaman main in raid. So you and I are ranged buddies.
Congratulations on your promotion. Shaman seems pretty good.
Yes. I got the items I wanted from Heroic Azshara as well, which is pretty fortunate. I got the font of power, and I got the staff also.
Okay.
And the staff is actually nasty. Azshara has a bunch of cool items. So there's this font of power, which is this trinket that you can channel it, and you channel it for 5 seconds, and then you get a 30-second huge buff to I think it's int or something, probably primary stat.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So you one fun thing that this has done is it's made my pre-pull ritual. Now I start 10 seconds before the pull. I have to.
You're the Stormkeeper too, right?
So yeah, I go Totem Mastery, Stormkeeper, Font of Power, Fire Elemental, Pre-Pot Lava Burst, and then at 0 seconds I Flame Shock the target and my Lava Burst connects with them.
This is some shenanigans. Hold on.
Yeah. Then I give him the zap.
Can you give that trinket back? Wait a second.
No. It's worth. I burst for a ridiculous amount in the first 30 seconds of the fight because the font of power gives you 3,000 primary stat. For 30 seconds, and I don't know. It sims pretty well, but it's going to be even better in the real world where you'll actually if you won't even channel this thing when you're doing damage, right? You'll channel this right before the damage phase, so it. The drawback of spending 4 seconds just channeling latent magic is actually a smaller drawback than it looks like because of that.
It's also really stupidly strong on shorter fights. For obvious reasons. For 1 minute to 2 minute encounters or even 3 minute fights, it's stupid OP. So it's actually going to be really, really strong in Mythic Plus because of that too.
Yeah, it's insane in Mythic Plus because of the downtime. But yeah, in a 2 minute raid fight. If you when you channel this thing pre-pull, it doesn't have a drawback, right? It's because you're just it doesn't make you go out of or not do anything for 4 seconds because you're not doing anything anyway pre-pull. Yeah, it's a very powerful trinket. And then the staff is called a new Azshara, Staff of the Eternal. It's a two-handed, it's a staff with crit, haste, and mastery on it, but like normal amounts of those stats. It's not like Crucible loot that has dramatically reduced stats to make up for the fact that it also has a special effect. And the special effect is your spells have a chance to grant you a charge of potency. If you fall below 10% health or mana, all of your potency stacks go away and damage enemies and heal allies for a couple thousand within 40 yards for each charge. So this thing can stack up to like 40 charges or whatever on you, and then you either get damage below 10% health or you cast like 5 healing surges and you get below 10% mana, and then you just do a huge AoE, like lay on hands on everybody and, nuke to every enemy within 40 yards.
I don't think they really thought that through for hybrid specs with just spamming out healing surges or regrowths or whatever else to spam down your mana until you just drop all 40 stacks of potency. You're like, oh yes, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because if I cast 4 healing surges, I'm at 14% mana or something right now, based on like my mana regen, which I think is haste scaling. So like I kind of want less haste so that I can actually be below 10% right after doing that and not have to wait for it to recharge a little bit to cast again. Or more haste so that I can cast 5 and then
stats. That seems like a reasonable solution.
Well, like if I could turn haste into another stat so that I could then, because like it's pretty annoying. I don't have a good way to get below that mana mark. Maybe I could do it if I spam purge instead of healing surge. I don't know. I'll have to do some more testing. But anyways, basically I can force this thing to trigger, and then it's actually huge damage and healing. Although it does incur it has a 10-minute cooldown on the whole effect. Once this thing pops, it doesn't do anything for 10 minutes. So.
Oh wait, I didn't even realize it was that.
Yeah.
Okay.
In Mythic Plus, it'll be like a twice per dungeon experience probably. This thing going off. Although in Mythic Plus, it does seem like it seems kind of strong. You're going to be just building up these charges over the whole dungeon. Like if you can avoid getting below 10% health for most of the dungeon, you just get to the last boss or whatever, or the hard boss, and you can just trigger this thing and like lay on hands the whole group.
Grievous Volcall?
Yeah, Grievous Volcall, which is active this week and is pretty hard. I did that thing on a plus 15, and it was not trivial. So yeah, this staff is really cool. Anyways, that's just some of the items from Azshara. All of the Azshara has a bunch of weird loot, like Crucible loot, except it seems like it's still got the good stats on it. I haven't looked to see how much of the good stats. Maybe they're still
it's normalized stats.
Okay,
they're normal.
Normal stats? Awesome, yeah, so pretty cool. Anyways, let's move right into our main topic, which is talking about all of the raid fights that we've got here. And we're starting off with the first boss fight. What is this first boss fight, Tentacles? What's going on here?
Yeah, Commander Severa, who is by far the most interesting first boss I think we've seen in such a long time. It's actually very similar to Zul'Harak if you ever did Hellfire Citadel. Basically, it's don't merge the two opposing elements, otherwise you're going to end up doing a decent amount of raid-wide damage. Of course, that kind of gets thrown out the window with Mythic, but because you have to end up having to reset your stacks. But in general, you're looking to not mix the two elements, otherwise you're just going to do a big pulsing amount of AoE whenever they do touch.
Yeah, so everybody either gets a Frost brand or a Toxin brand. And they each do some other stuff, and they each come with a dot too, but you kind of don't need to worry about that on Heroic. On Heroic, you might need to worry about it a little bit. One thing that's interesting about these is they stack up, and in order to reset your stacks, you actually need to intentionally touch the opposite element and AoE everybody. You don't actually need to do this if you do a lot of damage in Heroic. Like you'll only have 7 or 8 stacks when the fight ends potentially. But if you're in a group that's killing it slowly on Heroic, or once you get to Mythic, presumably, you're going to have to intentionally trigger the bad thing of touching the other color. So yeah, the boss just does a bunch of abilities that are flavored around, are either Toxic or Frost, and if they hit somebody of the other type, it'll cause that unstable mixture to happen too. There are also your marks can overflow, where you'll get a swirly soaky thing on you, and you basically want to stack for those. You want to stack with other people of the same mark as you, so to split that damage. Although it's not even that much damage, so you can maybe survive it with just big defensive instead as well. But may as well just stack that thing. Yeah, on Mythic, presumably this is again going to be all these mechanics are likely to be a lot less forgiving on Mythic. But yeah, I mean, it's a first boss. Yeah.
I don't really know. Yeah, it's not gonna be champion of the light level like troll. I hope, but
I think it's reasonable to expect that this on Mythic will be easier than Heroic Azshara, because Heroic Azshara is actually quite complicated. So it's not one to worry too much about. One other note is that on like the two different effects actually come with a slightly different flavor to them. The toxic one says don't move too much, or else you're gonna get disoriented. You'll like vomit because you've been moving too much, which is pretty good flavor. And the frost one comes with the don't move effect, like the last boss of Toldagor, which says if you keep moving too much, you're gonna get stunned. So
wait, the frost one you have to move.
Right, sorry. The frost one you have to move, and the toxic one you don't have to move. Yeah. Toxic one you have to not move, and you have the two. You'll have a little energy bar on your screen that you need to look at to see that effect and make sure it doesn't fill all the way up. But yeah, other than that, pretty straightforward boss. I don't know if how your experience was on this one, Tentacles, but I think it fell down on Heroic for me. Really, with it, you can do it without doing any of the mechanics, and still nobody will die. If you're a group that can kill heroic bosses, like if you can kill the other heroic bosses in this dungeon, this one will be no difficulty at all.
Yeah, and I do actually expect this to be probably one of the more challenging bosses on Mythic out of the first three. I think it's going to be it seems like it's definitely going to be harder than Blackwater Behemoth. Whether or not it's harder than Radiance of Shara, I guess will be to be seen. But overall, I think there's just like so many unique mechanics on this fight. It's kind of a shame that they wasted it on like a first boss of the instance.
Yeah, it's somewhat reminiscent of like Maiden from Tomb of Sargeras, right? With that had the light and fell theme to it as well, right? So that kind of mechanic of splitting the raid into the two different marks we've seen that deeper in dungeon or in raids before.
Yeah, so, maybe we don't want it deeper in raids. Maybe we want it about where it is, because if it has to be overly punishing for those marks to make the fight actually challenging, like you said, then it becomes Maiden, where you make one mistake, your whole entire raid instantly gets exploded, and you actually just want to die because the fight sucks so bad to play and it's impossible to farm.
Yeah, Maiden was never easy, right? And one of the things was that like you couldn't even go back to Tomb of Sargeras and kill Maiden and a pug the next tier very easily. Like, you know,
I don't trust any of those people.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Mythic Pugs, it was a Mythic Pug wall for the remainder of the expansion. Like you could never go back and kill that thing. Now, to be fair, after you killed it, you got to Fallen Avatar and kill Jaden, which were also hard. So it's not like there were easy bosses gated behind it or anything. But
yeah, I don't know what you're trying to pug after.
Yeah. You would stop your pug at Maiden for multiple reasons. But yeah, okay. So speaking of the next boss here, Blackwater Behemoth. This one is one that got, like, on PTR, everybody was yelling about this one being no fun. So for that reason, we think they've just kind of nerfed it into the ground. And that also makes me think that that the Mythic difficulty is going to be very, very easy. Because they just don't want people to spend too much time on a boss fight that everybody seems to be pretty predisposed to hate. You think that's a fair assessment of what's going on with Blackwater Behemoth?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely makes sense as to why, because like the underwater mechanic is kind of cool at first, and then you realize that swimming around actually kind of sucks, and that it's like almost impossible to be doing anything. There's so many like abilities that just do not work underwater either. Like you have to be seated yourself like on the floor to use like Rune of Power and stuff like that. There's just like so many abilities that just do not work that well like this.
Yeah, imagine being like you're trying to get if you play Resto Shaman, you've got Spirit Link Totem, Earthen Wall Totem, and Healing Rain that are all ground targeted, and you're just here like looking at your kit and even chain heal. Everybody's spread out in 3 dimensions instead of 2, so like it's gonna be harder to get good bounces on that stuff. Yeah,
because the axis in this game is just total trash too. For what it's worth, is like that's like I would say that's probably most of it actually. Is that the axis in this game is just like really bad and kind of fluky to deal with a lot of the time.
Yeah, and there's not a good way to like you can't place the ground effects in the Z-axis. They all just go on the ground.
Precisely. Yeah, they all sink to the bottom, so it's like. But then you also want people spread out because of the arc lightning or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah,
what is it actually called?
There's what is it? Bioelectric feelers. The behemoth reaches out with bioelectric feelers, gently electrifying the water around itself. Ooh, gently electrifying. Every 4 seconds, the behemoth feels for players in clumps within 5 yards of one another. When a clump is detected, the behemoth strikes, inflicting 80,000 nature damage to everyone within the detected clump.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, you gotta stay 5 yard spread on this fight. I guess the primary mechanic of this fight. Okay, one of the primary mechanics is remembering to interact with the oxygen-rich membrane before starting the fight. Otherwise, you're gonna drown. That has happened to us both times we've killed this boss. I think somebody's just drowned because of the oxygen-rich, or because of failing to click on the oxygen-rich membrane. But the secondary mechanic that is really the main thing going on is the healing reduction. So okay, everybody can't be healed on this fight because of a debuff called Darkest Depths, which makes it so that I guess the healers can't see you or something. I don't know. It's a little weird. But you can kill these pufferfish. There are 2 on each of the platforms that the boss hangs out in. And when you kill a pufferfish, there's this like green cloud that comes out. Everybody just goes and stands in that, and then you get this bioluminescence buff that lets you get healed. So really the entire joke of the fight is kill the pufferfish, stand in the cloud, attack the boss. When that buff is about to fall off, kill the second pufferfish, get that buff, and then the boss will move to a next platform. So the boss then goes from, there are like 3 platforms throughout the kind of encounter area that the boss will move between, and you'll need to swim across this, massive deep sea chasm to get to the other side. You need to make sure that you don't have bioluminescence when you're doing this, or else you'll get chomped by this big behemoth. So wait until that falls off, or on normal you can remove it by going into the slipstream. But on heroic or mythic, you're actually going to just have to wait or time your pufferfish killing so that bioluminescence is falling off at the right time. Then you go over to the next boss platform, and then you kill the next pufferfish there, and you can get healed again because everybody will go stand in the bioluminescence. You attack the boss for a while and just rinse and repeat that. Other than that, there really aren't too big mechanics, or there aren't any massive mechanics. The boss does some just damage to the raid with Toxic Spine, which is just designed to kill you if you haven't got bioluminescence. The boss also does Shock Pulse, which like pushes everybody back, and then does fall off damage. So
lame. Honestly, that mechanic actually sucks so bad.
Yeah, it's just so fun to swim against that. But yeah, you do need to make sure that you don't get pushed back off of the platform and get chomped by the deep sea thingy because you have the bioluminescence. So do be careful of that. And one kind of cool thing is that the later platforms actually have like chasms within them where you can get eaten by the deep sea terror. So like the first platform is just one big thing of land, but the later platforms are actually like little islands. So you need to make sure that you don't chill out between those islands with the bioluminescence, or you're going to get chomped. Yeah, and that's it. Then you just swim between the platforms, don't touch the jellyfish, and that's all there is to this one.
Yeah, no, this fight's pretty big joke. I would expect it to actually get one shot of Mythic. Basically, the only difference in like Mythic is that you actually end up getting like a Mr. Sassy-esque line that comes out from the boss, but there's not 4 of them, and they don't stun you if you stand in multiple, so you just like group soak the line. And it's like really easy. The fight is super stupid, so it's gonna be
piercing barb. Yeah, okay. That's it really does have the feeling of a boss that they are not interested in being a hard one because they don't want people to complain about it.
Yeah, no, it's like a patchwork fight. You're going to be able to pug this a couple of weeks in.
Yeah, as long as you can kill Commander Severa in a pug, you can probably do the first 3 in a pug.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, that definitely seems reasonable.
Which is nice because that way you don't get saved unless you can actually kill all of them.
Which is versus in BOD where it was like you only pug Champion of the Light because you really don't want to deal with Grong in a pug because Grong kind of suck.
Yeah, I mean Grong was not free. Like there's some coordination, some mythic coordination to it that pugs couldn't really handle, and also there were just like every group could kill champs, so champs didn't even filter out the bad groups. So yeah. All right, let's move on to Radiance of Azshara. Radiance of Azshara. This is a boss fight that's like reminiscent of that one from Eye of Azshara, right? The Wrath of Azshara.
Yeah, bring back Eye of Azshara. Hold on, I like that dungeon.
Yeah. So what's going on with this one, Tentacles?
So basically, Radiance of Shara is like super simple too. a lot of it is revolving around dodging these tornadoes, which you're just going to end up staying like grouped up in melee, similar to how you ended up kind of dealing with like Kinkaroth, where you're just going to be like grouped up in melee. We always move clockwise, except for whenever the tanks decide that we don't want to move clockwise, so we just move the other way for whatever reason and get split in 50-50, but that's neither here nor there. So you end up group moving most of the time, dodging the tornadoes. You'll get these arcane bombs on you, exactly the same as you got on Wrath of Ashara. They end up going on like 3 people or something. You end up having to dispel them. The people group back up in melee, and then eventually, once the boss hits 100 energy, he will phase into an intermission, spawn these traps. You can hit the traps, and they'll end up spawning tornadoes. He'll end up like channeling for like 10 seconds and summoning an ad where you can actually still see across the platform, so you can actually see where the ad ends up being, and then you just make your way towards that big ad. You end up killing it. You phase the boss out of the intermission, and then you're good to go. Really, really simple fight. Just don't get hit by tornadoes, and you're pretty much chilling.
Yeah, there are like these trap lines that'll spawn in that intermission when the ads show up. And you need to, like, you don't want to pop all of them. You just want to pop one of them and then go through there. And yeah, you like, there's this vision obscurity in the intermission too, but you can see where the ad spawns right before the vision obscurity comes in. So nothing to worry about. And then you can figure out how you need to move to get to it.
Yep. One of the big changes in Mythic is that it spawns 2 ads in the intermission. So you're going to have to split your raid 50-50. But again, like, this fight's stupid easy. So you're not really, you're not really sweating.
There's a little bit of AoE that you can get done in the intermission, and otherwise it's just purely single target. Really nothing to worry about, I think, for most groups, this boss fight. And then, yeah, just the arcane bombs, like, you can dispel them and they'll fall off a little early, but you don't need to worry about that. They you can just wait for them to fall off as well, I think, right? Or no, you have to dispel them because otherwise the bomb will hit the person. Right, yeah. Okay, so it is exactly the same as the Azshara bombs.
Identical. Yeah. Except it's
different animation.
It's even easier than Wrath of Ashara.
Yeah, a different animation. Very nice animation, actually. I think the arcane bombs have. So yeah, then the only mythic change is the second ad, and some obviously health and damage. So yeah, I think you're right, Tentacles. It looks like this fight on Mythic is going to be still less complicated than Azshara on Heroic. So. I think you have a good read that these first 3 are going to just flop on Mythic.
I think these are all one-shots, and then Lady Ashvin, we're really cranking up the difficulty.
Yeah, so let's talk about Lady Ashvin here. The first potential wall of the raid on Mythic.
So basically, this kind of ends up coming down to tuning. So in Heroic, the boss isn't really that bad, but like on Mythic, just some of the additional Mythic mechanics that we'll end up talking about in a little bit are just going to make this fight just significantly more challenging, depending on where they end up lining up for tuning-wise. Like, of course, it's all contingent on the Mythic mechanics actually being challenging, but by and large, this fight is designed in a way that it's actually able to be pretty rough. So basically, you end up having it's a 2-phase fight. It'll go back between phase 1 and phase 2 depending on where she is. She has a shield and she starts off the fight with a shield, and she'll spawn corals and stuff like that. And you end up having to soak like these bubbles that will do raid wide AOE damage. And then so that's on Heroic. But then once you break the shield, she no longer she'll end up like spawning these Azurite things that you're able to link up with a partner, and you'll end up being able to zap down some of the corals, so you no longer have to soak those bubbles, and you're going to end up doing AoE damage. There's also like a circle that you end up getting around you that if you accidentally stack it on top of your friends, you're going to encase them all inside of a bubble. It can be broken out with damage, so you're going to want to put these bubbles like in front of where the boss is, like not where the tanks are standing, like in front of that, so that the tanks can drag the boss on top of your bubbles and break you out pretty quickly. Yeah,
like if the boss is being moved clockwise, you'll just you move even clockwise-er of the boss, and
exactly. right in front of where the tanks are, and then the tanks will eventually move the boss right on top of you. So it's pretty chill.
Yeah, so you want to stack all of your all the people that are targeted by Briny Bubble just right on top of each other, and then nuke down the bubbles and move the boss on top of it. Yeah. Other than that,
every time she phases, her shield gets 50% bigger than it was previously too. So you want to bloodlust her whenever she's in the non-shielded phase, so you get less amounts of the shields overall. You definitely want to make sure that you end up having like cooldowns and stuff like that. potential for condensed life force or not purification protocol. What's the essence of the focusing iris? There's potential for both of those to be used just because of the high amounts of burst that they end up giving you.
Yeah, it's a 1 minute and 10-second phase, so you can use that to plan out your cooldowns, but you want to have access to as many of your DPS cooldowns as you can over that 1 minute and 10 seconds. So Bloodlust, make sure you're saving like your big DPS cooldowns, because again, the fight is longer the more of these phases there are. Like you want to put all your damage into phase 2s if you can. And then so there's the Arcane Azurite cutters. Basically, the corals that she spawns are what spawn the bubbles, and the bubbles are kind of annoying. Like there are these little globes of water that she'll spawn during phase 1 out of the coral formations. So in order to destroy the corals, you need to kill them with the cutting Azurite in phase 2. And so this will mark like 3 different pairs of 2 people in the raid with a little color thing above them. You can see this GIF going on if you're watching on one of the video versions here. And basically,
shout out Wowhead.
Yeah, we got the Wowhead guide as our source here, which links will be everywhere, and links are in Twitch chat and everything for this guide. Fantastic source of information. And so it'll spawn a cutter beam that does damage to everybody between the 2 people with the same color. But that beam will also destroy any corals it hits. So phase 2 is also, like, if it's not going to be the last phase 2 of the fight, you need to also clean up the coral. Now, if it is going to be the last phase 2 of the fight, or if it's going to be close and you just need to push damage, then don't worry about destroying coral. That's only a phase 1 thing that you need. You only want to destroy them to make the next phase 1 more easy. But if you're trying to just nuke the boss and skip the next phase 1, which is presumably going to be the last phase 2 of the fight is going to be that way on Mythic as well, then just ignore the cutters and just make sure you don't hit the whole raid with all 3 of them, and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay, so let's kind of go into the reason that this might be a mid-tier wall in Mythic. So basically, it ends up being with how those bubbles end up spawning and what they end up doing. So the Rippling Wave is the bubble. There's like a new ability called Empowered Rippling Wave on Mythic, and basically it's the same bubbles except you have to soak it 3 times. And then in addition to that, the bubbles that you're already soaking, not only are they doing more like raid-wide AoE damage, but in addition to that, they're applying a waterlogged dot, which does a pretty sizable amount of damage. So you have to like rotate through people who are soaking it the whole entire time.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that dot cannot be immune. So you're really kind of pigeonholed into like rotating through people. And then just like, it really ends up depending on how bad that dot is going to be, right? That waterlogged dot, if it does just a stupid amount of damage, you're not going to want to run a bunch of healers. Because, okay, so like basically this is like a fight where you end up wanting to run less healers so that you end up killing the fight quicker, so you have like less stacks of that waterlogged dot on you. But at the same time, you do still need a decent amount of healers and decent amount of healing cooldowns, just because of whenever those rippling waves do get soaked, they do a sizable amount of AoE, and if people have high stacks of the waterlogged, then the healers might not be able to even deal with the AoE. So it's kind of one of those things where you're just trying to like burn the boss like ASAP. There's like a pseudo soft enrage on it, just because of like how the stacks of the waterlogged end up working out. I think in addition to that, like it doesn't even reset on death too, so you can't even like sack it with Ankh Totem or anything.
Wow, it doesn't reset on death? That's okay. Yeah, so we won't be able to just...
It's like a 20-minute debuff or something.
So it definitely lasts for the whole fight, and you're just going to need to, like, you're going to get 1 stack on everybody, and then you get 2 stacks on everybody, and then, that's just huge damage ramping up as the fight goes on.
So there's potential for, like, class stacking on this fight, too. So you're going to have shit like Rogues and Demon Hunters, I think, are going to be pretty
Demon Hunters
relevant.
seem prime for this, yeah. I think Fury Warriors do a pretty good amount of self-healing, right? And they do pretty good bursty, like, damage over 1 minute and 10 seconds, right?
So while Fury Warriors have really good self-sustain, they're not like I think they're just like strictly worse than Demon Hunter. But yeah, if you have like a really good Fury Warrior player, Fury Warrior is going to be super, super sick here too.
Yeah, and I think they do nasty damage too.
Yeah, anything that has stupid self-sustain. Obviously, Warlocks are going to be pretty fucking stupid. I think Ellie's going to be on the worst end for this overall, but I think Ellie can still be good. I think Moonkin's going to be good because they're fucking unkillable too. Priest, I think, is going to be on.
Shadow Priest looks pretty good, right? They do pretty good self-sustain, right? Yeah.
Shadow has like a stupid amount of like self-sustain and self-healing and stuff like that too, but they're not, like
Also, you
I think
can you bring Vampiric Embraces during the burn phase, and that'll let your healers DPS a bit instead. So
yeah, that's also a very good point. So yeah, I think in general you're going to be wanting to run a lot more range, like the Warlocks, the Priests, the Moonkins, and then the Demon Hunters and the Rogues also seem pretty good. But then Fury Warrior seems okay, and then beyond that, you don't really want any of the other classes, I don't think.
yeah, don't bring anybody else in your guild. Just sit them, bench them.
Nope, nobody else.
Recruit some Warlocks. Yeah.
Reroll if honestly if you have a reroll Warlock at this point, I don't really know what you're thinking. Raid and Warlock, name a more iconic duo.
Yeah, it can't be done. Can't be done. They've been good for the past 7 tiers or something now.
Yeah, last year they were bad was Emerald Nightmare as a point of reference, so let that sink in.
Mm-hmm. Every time we have this discussion, the discussion isn't whether they were bad between now and Emerald Nightmare, it's whether they were actually bad in Emerald Nightmare or whether they were just secretly good even then.
Okay, so then last time they were bad was they were mediocre in Hellfire Citadel. Affliction was okay.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this fight looks like it's going to be a wall on Mythic, maybe. It looks like it's going to be the first Mythic fight where really Mythic level HPS and DPS checks are applied, because there's a big HPS check, and you're also going to need to hit a DPS check to do this in as few phases as possible. And
until it becomes Rosticon again, and we're just fucking trolling because we didn't realize the fight's going to be significantly undertuned.
Yeah, that's true. Obviously the tuning is as yet unknown, but if the tuning, this one looks like a fight where it could be a serious wall. Now it could be that one of the earlier fights is hard, like Radiance could also be a wall if they overtune it. So we could be looking at that, but
I think Ashman has the highest likelihood of actually being the first challenging fight at the instance. I think there's a high degree of likelihood of it being somewhere in the 30 pull range, but I think it could potentially get to 50 to 75 pulls if it's a really challenging fight.
Yeah, and you're gonna need to do these mechanics well. There's actually quite a lot going on this fight, especially if you're trying to optimize your damage at the same time as executing all these mechanics. So it'll be.
I think you have to class stack this fight. As weird as it sounds, I think it's just one of the first fights that you just actually have to class stack for.
Yeah, it probably won't be tuned so hard that a really good guild can't kill it with a non-stacked comp, but it definitely will be easier if you have. I think that Warlocks are a great call of just a spec that really excels at doing all these mechanics. Demonic circling around to do cutters and get out to soak a ball or whatever also seems pretty strong.
Affliction with ID and
the ID drain,
amounts of self healing. Yeah, exactly, the ID drain.
And any spec that has good burst over that does good damage in the minute and 10 seconds window is going to be valuable here as well. If that lines up perfectly with your cooldowns, if you have a 60-second cooldown that does a bunch of damage or whatever, that's good news for you on this fight. And it's good news for any essences or talent choices or Azurite traits that do that as well. So be looking for those.
That's why I think Focusing Iris is going to be pretty good here. Focusing Iris or Condensed Life Force both seem pretty decent. Condensed Life Force, obviously, if you get 3 phase 2s, then Condensed Life Force will be a little bit better, I think, in general. But for Focusing Iris, it's definitely better if you're only getting 2 phases or 4 phases, I guess, right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we'll end up seeing what people end up running. I actually haven't got Focusing Iris. How the hell do you get it, Dratnos?
Essence of the Focusing Iris, you have to do a 7 or higher.
And then you have to open up your chest after?
It's not the weekly chest, it's just in the box at the end of the dungeon.
I didn't get it. What?
Yeah, I didn't get it from a 13 deplete. Then I got it from a 7 in time, so maybe timing is the variable, but I've heard some reports of getting it in time. Or
I didn't get it out of a 19 deplete, but
I've also heard reports of it not dropping from 10 or higher. I've heard reports that it has to be a 7, 8, or 9 potentially.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. It's either it's one of those two. I think.
I think it has to be timed. I think what that guy's saying in the chat, Crypt or whatever.
Yeah.
Is saying in the chat. I think he's right. I think that makes more sense now. I was like, I didn't get it. I was like, why didn't I get it? I was like, I wanted that. Oh well.
Yeah, so you'll do that. You'll get your Focusing Iris rank 2. You can get rank 1 for doing a 4 or higher, but you don't need to do it in order or anything. And then to get rank 3, you just need to do Mythic Plus each week. And if you do 15s or higher, you'll get it in 2 weeks' time. If you do 10s or higher, you'll get it in 3 weeks' time. Yeah, just stuff comes out of your weekly cache that combines to make it, and you get more the higher key you did.
Okay, sick. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on now to the 5th of 8 bosses in Azshara's Eternal Palace, Orgazoa. This thing's
Gorgonzola?
Or Gorgonzola. Okay, I like the name. This one's like a... Is it fair to call this an octopus? I think it is.
It's a mindbender or something.
Mindbender? Okay. It's definitely something like that.
I want him as a mount.
Yeah, definitely. What is the thing with this fight, Dells?
Nothing. This fight's really easy. So basically, the fight, I guess it just revolves around the incubation fluid and not being stacked up for the arc lightning, right? That seems like that's like most of the fight is just kind of make sure that you're spread, don't zap your friends.
The incubation fluid didn't even end up causing too much, like, when the dot was on the whole raid, it was not difficult to heal on
because
heroic.
It resets whenever you phase too. I don't know. It's kind of weird. So basically, there's like a pseudo soft enrage in phase 2 with the incubation fluid and the arc lightning, depending on like how the fight ends up working out. But the fight just like felt like it was like so undertuned health wise that we just like instantly blew up the boss before we even saw the ads in phase 2, and I just didn't. I don't even know what the ads in phase 2 do. I literally just did not see them.
Okay, yeah. So phase 1, so the incubation fluid basically is this dot that the boss will apply, and then the boss will cast Arcane Current at players who have it, and that's like a chain lightning effect, and the chain lightning will apply the dot to anybody else that it hits as well. So basically you need to make sure that if you have incubation fluid, you're either by yourself or only with other people who also have incubation fluid, and that way you won't cause new debuffs to go out whenever the Arcane Current gets cast. Then there's the little dance mechanic, Dribbling Ichor, which is just there are circles on the ground and you dodge them. They cover most of the room, but it's pretty easy to find a safe spot, and you have quite a bit of time to do it. So you just look for space between the little circles, you dodge those. It does quite a lot of damage, so do make sure you do that. If you get caught or whatever, you're probably going to have to use a defensive.
Okay, so hold on, hear me out. What if they end up casting Arcane Current during the Dribbling Ichor?
Well, the way we were handling this is we kind of had an incubation fluid stack. Like, okay, the incubation fluid melee and the incubation fluid range stayed on one side of the boss versus the other. So as long as you do that, then the Arcane Current isn't a problem, because it'll always just chain to 3 people that have fluid already and doesn't apply new fluids. But at the end of the day, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a wipe or anything if you do spread a couple of the dots around with the Arcane Current anyway. So
yeah.
I don't think it'll be something to worry too much about. It might be on Mythic. On Mythic, you might have to make sure that it never spreads. The boss also has ads in phase 1. The ads, you just tank them away from the boss. You kill him. The tank swap mechanic on this fight is actually worth mentioning. Most fights, we don't bother talking about the tank swap mechanic because it's pretty straightforward. But on this fight, the tank swap mechanic actually is a stacking damage taken decrease to the target. So that, and it'll instantly kill you if you get to 10 stacks. So the way you want to do this is you want a tank that has a bunch of stacks of this to go and tank the ads because they do quite a bit of damage, while the new tank then takes over on tanking the boss itself. The 3 ads, each time one of them dies, they'll spawn a little swirly, and somebody needs to soak that swirly. It should be a tank, because it does quite a lot of damage. And then if that swirly is unsoaked, it'll nuke the whole raid instead. So you just have the tank that's tanking the Zoetroids also stands in that swirly. Very straightforward mechanic there.
I don't remember. Does the swirly pierce through immunity? I think it does.
I believe. I think I remember cloaking it and dying anyway, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it pierces through immunities, but I don't remember why I believe that. I think it does though, for some reason.
Yeah, I have I wasn't sure enough to say it now, but I think it does. I think you need to be careful of it. Yeah, it may very well amniotic splatter. Yeah. And it does quite a lot of damage here. It does, what is this?
Yeah, so basically, okay, so this fight actually
2 or 2
has
mil.
potential
Okay.
to be, yeah, so this fight actually has potential to be 3 tanked on Mythic. Mm-hmm. Just because you have the 3rd tank off to the side, just spamming, just doing whatever. I guess you could just use a prop paladin or some shit. Just he'll be spamming, sitting there healing himself or whatever with the damage taken, decreased damage taken buff and stuff, and just kind of hang out. But I don't know. Orgazo is a pretty interesting fight. And then you have the next phase where you end up running down the platform and stuff. But
yeah, so this is just you just dodge swirlies on the ground. And I think on Mythic there will also be the soak swirlies on this gauntlet that the tank will stand in or whatever. Rogues with Feint seem like a pretty good answer to that as well. And then you get to the bottom, you interrupt the boss. Make sure that everybody's at the bottom before you interrupt the boss because it'll kill anybody still on the gauntlet. So we do want to avoid that. That happened to us, yeah.
You can actually wind rush totem and jump like off the bridge and jump like make your way all the way to Gorgonzola. But if you hit the wind rush at the wrong angle, you end up hitting a death wall. So you got to make sure that you hit the wind rush at the right spot. So you should really make sure that Parse Culture ends up doing that. It wastes a bunch of time. Okay.
Yeah. That sounds like a good use of resources. I know Demon Hunters have a double jump that gets them there as well.
Yeah, you just have to have a speed boost. So that's why wind rush is normally the go-to for that.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a good use of our time for sure. Yeah. So anyways, the boss phases on a timer, not on a health thing. So the amount of time before the phase 2 is just always the same. In phase 2, the boss summons Naga instead of the Zoetroids. There's 3 different types of Naga, of which she'll spawn 2. There's a Myrmidon that targets a random player with Aqualance. And then after 4 seconds, the ad spawns just a swirly at their location, so you just move away from that. There's a Witch, which does a zappy nature damage thing to random people. And there's an interruptible cast that stuns the raid, so you want to interrupt that, or else you'll get stunned. And then there's a Hulk as well, and the Hulk does a lot of damage to everybody within 14 yards of the ad. So either the ad tank is in that by itself, or you can get everybody in there to split the damage. And yeah, you need to make sure that at least one person gets hit in there, otherwise it'll do damage to the whole raid. And that's all there is to the second phase. The second phase, in our experience in Heroic, the boss has been pretty low by the time the second phase starts, so we don't even have to deal with too many of these mechanics. The boss just kind of fell over. Maybe if your raid is doing less damage, that will be not true. You'll have to actually be in this phase for a little while. Maybe that's going to be a pug feature in Heroic. But for us, even with low amounts of gear, it was pretty quick. Phase 2.
And on Mythic, obviously the incubation fluid and stuff like that is going to end up being like a pseudo soft enrage, just because of how it all ends up shaping out with the dots and everything else. So that's
So Mythic,
man, this fight is so undertuned on Heroic. I cannot actually see it being hard on Mythic for some reason.
On Mythic, the dribbling Ichor dance circle thing is going to be a one shot if you don't have a defensive. So, but it's not hard to dodge. Like, it's really not. I don't think we had very many damage instances on Heroic, and that was everybody's first time seeing it. So I think that's not going to be too big of a deal. The Arcane Current is going to target everybody with Incubation Fluid, rather than just one person with it. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be the big thing with Mythic, is you're really going to, you need to make sure that you don't stand on top of other people without Incubation Fluid, or else this is going to scale out of control pretty quickly. And then the later ones you're going to need defensives for. And then the boss is going to spawn Zoetroids twice as often. So that's going to be tough too. That's definitely something about the three tanking thing seems likely for that reason, if there are twice as many Zoetroids as before.
What the fuck is a Zoetroid?
That's the ad in this fight, Tentacles. Hello? Pay attention.
What is it?
Yeah, no, it's like a mind bender.
Is it also a mind bender?
It is an aberration, so the stuff that cares about aberrations.
Oh, the belt. Yeah, that's right. The belt is really good here on this fight, right?
Yeah.
What is really good on this in Zakul?
Yeah, those are the aberration fights, right? I think.
Yeah, that's actually really important to talk about. So basically there's a benthic belt. God, benthic gear fucking blows. There's a benthic belt that makes you do increased apparition damage whenever you're in Azshara's Eternal Palace.
Yeah,
obviously very strong for Gorgonzola and very strong for Zakul. So you should probably have that belt for those fights.
Yep, true, very true. Try and get one with a socket and leech. That's my recommendation. So if you choose to do something other than that, that's wrong, and you should instead choose to get one with a socket. All right, let's move on to the next boss here, which is the Queen's Court. So the Queen's Court is a council style fight. 2 targets. There's a melee one, Silivax the Zealous, and a ranged one, Pashmar. You need to spread these 2 out, or else they're gonna get Separation of Power, which makes them take 99% reduced damage, and so you can see how that would be bad. And you do need to kill them within 15 seconds of each other. Otherwise, one of them will heal to 50% of their health, and that'll be disastrous. So we do want to avoid that. So Silivax the Zealous is like a melee ad, and based on the mechanics that it has, it's better if that's the one that your melee are attacking. Whereas Pashmar is a caster, and that's a little bit better if your ranged are the ones attacking Pashmar. Sylvax does like a charge that you need to either immunity, sacrifice the target, or soak it with a bunch of people. It is frost damage, so it can be cloaked or spell warded, that kind of stuff. It's not physical, even though it looks like it's physical because it's a charge. So that's a fun little fact. And there are times in the fight where it's hard to stack. There are some spread mechanics in this fight. So the way that I think this is going to work best is like if you do have a prop paladin, spell warding those ones, it seems like a good play using Ankh Totem on those ones, and then stacking for the ones where you can stack makes a lot of sense. Also, anytime anybody targeted with this has an ice block or whatever, using that also seems good. Sylvax also sometimes does Zealous Eruption, where you're just going to want to get everybody next to Sylvax, otherwise you take huge damage. Pashmar has the reverse mechanic to that, which is Fanatical Verdict, where you just have to get away from her big circle when she casts that. So that's why you want her to be the one that's being attacked by the range rather than the one being attacked by the melee. There are these Potent Sparks, which you want to just... They all kind of slowly lose health, and if they all explode at the same time, it'll be disastrous. So you want to nuke one down, and then kill another one a couple seconds later, and then let the third one expire on its own, is the strategy for that. And that's all there is to the two bosses by themselves, on at least on normal. There's obviously more mechanics added on Heroic and Mythic that we'll talk about soon. But then we get to the decrees, and the decrees are the fun part of this fight. On Mythic, there's always going to be one active. On normal, they're active half the time, and on Heroic, they're active like 3/4 of the time or something.
Something like that.
Yeah. Form Ranks is a decree that puts these circles on the ground, and each one needs to have at least one person in them, or else there'll be raid damage. So whenever you see those circles, the little purple circles on the ground, everybody's going to need to go... Not everybody needs to stand in them, but each one needs to have somebody stand in them. Repeat Performance is a very toxic decree, depending on what spec you're playing. It says if you cast the same ability twice, you get silenced and pacified for 2 seconds. So if you're a Windwalker Monk, this shouldn't affect you at all because...
Balanced Druid.
Yeah, Balanced Druid, it shouldn't affect you at all either because it just doesn't matter whether you cast Solar Wrath or Lunar Strike at any given point in your rotation. So that's, pretty good for you. But if you're like a Warlock and your rotation is 5 Shadow Bolts in a row, that's a little rough. Or if you want to try and cast multiple Unstable Afflictions in a row, as Affliction Warlocks do like to do, that is pretty toxic. I think all 3 Warlock specs have some difficulty with that one, so...
we have somebody in chat who's a mage main. I feel sorry for you for being a mage main.
Yep, it's definitely it is pretty rough.
Frostbolt.
Yeah,
no, they're playing fire. They're playing fire. Hold on.
They're playing fire. Yeah. Fireball.
Fireball proc. Hold on. Fire blast.
Yeah, so there are some. So basically, every spec either is like, okay, Windwalker is like A tier, totally fine. If you are playing with a Windwalker that ever gets silenced by this thing, kick him from your guild. But then there are other specs that can make slight adjustments and be fine with this as well. I think Elemental falls into this category, where like it's pretty easy to avoid casting the same spell twice. There are a couple of spots where you'd want a Lightning Bolt back to back, but you can just do a Chain Lightning or whatever instead, or a Frost Shock, and you'll be fine. So you do lose a little bit of damage, but it's not the end of the world. And then there are some specs where it is the end of the world, and this decree is just super rough. So, sucks if that's you. Okay, so there are other decrees. There's Standalone, which is spread 5 or more yards. There's Deferred Sentence. This is a misunderstood decree by a lot of people. So Deferred Sentence basically says whenever you move, you do incoming. You're going to take some damage, but it stacks up while you're not moving. And if it does more damage when you do move or when it expires based on the number of stacks it has. So the way this thing works is that basically anytime you get to 2 stacks, you should move a little bit, and then you'll drop back down to 1 stack, and then you'll be fine. If you just don't move at all, it'll all stack up and then kill you in one big burst. And if you keep moving, it'll be a pretty serious dot because it'll just keep ticking more often than it would have stacked up. So you just want to do short little bursts of movement to keep this thing managed. Obey or Suffer is a decree that says if you take some damage, then for the next 5 seconds, you're not going to be able to get healed, which means that if there's big incoming damage, that's going to be multiple instances of damage, you need to be really careful here. You need to find ways to trigger this. Tank defensives need to be used while they're unhealable, and everybody else's defensives are going to need to be used if there are, if there's more incoming damage than you can survive during that 5 seconds. But it doesn't seem like too big of a problem on Heroic, this particular decree. We'll have to see if there's Mythic overlaps that are really rough with it, though.
This fight really doesn't change too much on Mythic, from what I understand too. You just get like a circle that spawns around the room occasionally, where you end up just like losing part of the room, like spacing. So that plus the decrees spawn a little bit quicker, so you always have one active.
Yeah.
But overall,
decrees are the main
not
thing.
Really much changes.
I think, and like doing these decrees while you're also soaking the charges or whatever is pretty reasonable. Okay, so yeah, the mythic mechanic, and I haven't read this yet. Sphere of Influence. Each decree has an associated flag around the edges of the encounter space. On mythic difficulty, the decree's associated flag emits an aura around it, dealing large amount of damage every second to anyone who remains within it. And it also amplifies the effect of the decree, making it last longer or deal more damage. Okay, so basically, whenever the decree is active, you need to make sure that you don't stand in like there's space in the room that's denied.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get out of the circle is basically all that mechanic is.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but other than that, it doesn't really look like a big mythic mechanic. So.
Cool. I mean, I think that's the last mythic mechanic we should cover because Zakul and
Azshara, yeah.
Yeah, they're just gonna be like fucking coin flips on like what they actually end up doing on the thing.
Right. So yeah, let's talk about those two in the context of heroic only. So Zakul, second to last boss of the raid. This big thing. What's happening on Zakul, Tentacles?
So Zakul is a very. It's definitely one of the most interesting fights that we've seen in a while. So basically, you end up having multiple phases. So basically, at the very beginning of the fight, it's going to be pretty easy overall. You just end up having like this dread mechanic where if people will get fear, you need to kind of stagger the dispels on the fear. And then you end up having like these summoners spawning, which spawn like these little ads that don't really do anything out of it. So yeah, you're going to see some really sick Shadow Priest gameplay.
Yeah, Shadow Priests are nasty on this fight because there's a haste buff later that they are really happy about, and the haste buff lasts only as long as they can stay alive without getting external heals, and Shadow Priest can do that forever. So
yeah, so basically once you push the boss to 85%, then you're going to actually start getting these.
It's the next push, I think.
Just like some of these. Oh, okay. So is it the 70%?
It's the 70% push that you got.
Okay, so basically once you get the boss to. Okay, so basically 100 to 70 doesn't really do anything. You just end up having like these summoners spawning. Then you actually just have to kill the summoners. Just like cross-dotting ranged DPS are like really strong for this fight, just because you can end up like any ranged and any multi-dotter. So you got your Spriest, your Boomkins, your Warlocks. All those are stupid strong for this fight overall, just because of how the summoners and all of that work out. And then from 70 to 50%. The boss ends up spawning like these 3 circles out of the front of him, and they like have like fire animation around him, and you have like one person standing in each of them. And once he ends up finishing his cast, 3 people go downstairs into like a red situation, like this red room. It's the same room, and it's called the Delirium Realm. All 3 of your friends are also targetable, so don't hit them. They're nice people, so don't hit them. And then you end up getting just like a big haste buff, so you're just going to end up being just like slamming the boss here. I think you're going to end up wanting to send down 3 Warlocks, and they're just going to dot one another's pets and shit, and just like destroy the boss.
Yeah, I think Shadow Priests also destroy everything.
So yeah, you're going to send Shadow Priests and Warlocks down most likely. That seems like that's the most reasonable right now is for the Delirium.
Yeah, because you can't get healed. So you need to just be sustained by yourself. You can't get external heals. So. Yeah,
and then once you push the boss to 50%, everybody comes back out of the Delirium Realm. You're going to end up spawning summoners soon, and once you do spawn the summoners, you end up having to go down into the Fear Realm. You actually have to be inside the Fear Realm to kill the summoners. So what we did, I know you said that you bloodlusted at a different time, but what we did is once we hit 50%, we popped our bloodlust. We sent the people down. We sent only ranged DPS down, actually. We sent all of our ranged DPS down. And all of our ranged DPS had Bloodlust. They instantly killed the summoners. They came back up. So basically, you have to use like your extra action button to come back up too.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just kind of burn the boss. You have to make sure that you stay like towards the edge of the room, because you're going to spawn like puddles on you. So making sure that you're staying like super close to the edge of the room is very important here as well.
Yeah, there's definitely good reasons to watch your positioning on this fight. There's also these tentacles that come from the side of the room that just nuke the whole anybody hit by them, so you need to make sure you dodge those.
Yeah. I actually missed something. There's also a Manic Dread. So basically, once you push the boss to 50%, Dread turns into Manic Dread, and it does like a ridiculous amount of AoE damage towards the whole entire raid. Plus, it also spawns like these delirium circles on the ground where your people can actually go into the delirium realm as well. Obviously, you're going to need self-sustain. So, like you said, Warlocks and Priests, hybrid specs. I guess Fury Warriors could also be probably pretty good. Demon Hunters seems like they could also be pretty decent at self-sustaining the way through the...
Yeah, you can also just go in there for like 30 seconds and use your health stone, your health pot, your defensives to hang out in there. And, you know, this is useful because the boss does have DPS checks when it shields itself with the big... and starts casting Dark Pulse, and you need to get through its shield before that cast finishes. Otherwise, it will kill everybody. So... using the Delirium as a way to facilitate breaking that shield is a good strategy.
Oh yeah, there's also a tentacle that spawns. I forgot. Rayeth said something about it in the chat. So basically, the way that you end up having to deal with the tentacle is like the tentacle is only dangerous from like the far side of the room. So even though there's going to be multiple in Mythic, I know we didn't say we said we weren't going to talk about Mythic mechanics, but there's going to be multiple in Mythic. So basically, the only position you have to look is like straight across the room, because that's like the only place that you can actually get sideswiped by. So making sure that you just like look straight cross room, and then obviously like look like towards your near side. So you're going to like always kind of be close to the outer edge of the circle.
Being at the edge, because every single tentacle will hit the center of the circle, right?
So making sure that you're towards the outer edge is important.
Like whereas only a few tentacles will hit. Like there's only one tentacle that will hit each point on the outer edge of the circle. So. Just the more towards the outer edge of the room you are, the fewer tentacles you have to worry about. And you like if you're at the very outer edge, you only have to worry about one spawning right on top of you or right across the room from you.
Right across. So you gotta look just like straight across the room. You're gonna be chilling.
Yeah, pretty much. Easy enough to do. Although again, it does mean that like it's interesting because there's also these ground space denying mechanics that you do need to watch out for. So keeping those like sort of central, not on the very edge of the room, so that you have the edge of the room to play in. Is maybe going to be a trap. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how the ground gets managed for sure.
Yeah, honestly, I'm sure you could probably just like AFK follow the boss around. I'm sure your tanks are probably going to be trying to pay really close attention to where the tentacles are spawning. I know our tanks were calling it out the whole entire time, so you could probably just like Jaina Proudmoore style AFK follow the boss around and probably be okay.
Yeah. I mean there are a lot of fights where movement is important and it's the tank's job to do it. So this is certainly maybe one of those. Yeah,
get Jason in there. He needs to move the boss around.
Ooh, I don't know about that. Jason's been demoted to our mage for this tier, so we don't have to worry about that.
That's definitely a step back. Unfortunate.
Yeah. Okay. Last boss of the raid, Queen Azshara. Very, very, very intricate boss. This boss has. It's got to be the most mechanics ever of a boss fight, I think, right?
It's a lot of mechanics, but so from like top level down, the fight's actually not super complex. Like whenever you just kind of try to break it into like normalized chunks, but yeah, there is like a lot of bullshit mechanics. I will agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. So throughout the entire fight, there are these ancient wards. There are 4 ward positions in the map, and at the start of the fight. The 3 outer ones are the ancient ones that will be drained by the boss. And in order to charge them back up, you need to go stand in them. And when you do stand in them, you slowly start giving energy to the ward, but you also stack a % health reduction on yourself that lasts for 1 minute and 48 seconds and reduces your max health by 10% per stack. So the math on this ends up working out that you're going to want to go stand in the ward until you get 4 or 5 stacks of drained soul. And then jump out of it and wait until that falls off, and then you can go charge again. And you want to keep all these wards topped up. You really want to make sure that none of them ever fall out of energy. Like if they ever lose all their energy, it'll start doing high ticking damage to the whole raid, which is pretty much a wipe on any difficulty above normal. And if all 3 ancient wards reach 0 energy, then it's an immediate wipe, which I don't know if I've seen that happen. I don't think that'll happen all that often. I think you're pretty dead at 2 wards, so... and you're pretty dead at 1 ward even, so it's not something to worry too much about. Yeah,
pretty much.
And on Mythic, I'm sure like this maybe the last like 5 seconds of the fight or whatever, there'll be 1 dead ward or something, and you could survive that. But any more than that pressure surge does huge amounts of damage. So you need to keep the wards charged up for that, and that's going to happen the whole fight. Azshara will be draining these wards, but in the first phase, Azshara isn't even there. She summons these 2 Naga instead that you're going to have to kill. What's the deal with these 2 Naga, Tentacles?
So basically, the Naga end up needing to be DPS down evenly. They need to be killed within a couple seconds of one another. Otherwise, they're going to. I think they like heal or something. I don't really know. They end up casting something, and we DPS them down evenly, so we didn't actually see what happens. I assume they heal or something. So making sure that you kill them pretty controlled is important. Obviously, the rune mechanic starts in phase 1 as well. Just making sure that you end up soaking up those runes, keeping them healthy for prolonged periods of time, rotating people through. We had somebody calling out who didn't have stacks of the debuff at some point. Not in phase 1. Like, obviously in phase 1.
Yeah, in phase 1 it's pretty tame, right? You don't actually, everybody doesn't need to soak the wards or anything, but as the phases go longer, you start losing more and more ward integrity, so you start needing to make sure that actually everybody soaks these things.
Correct. And then there's also a mechanic called Beckon, which in phase 1, Beckon, you're going to need to be towards the edge of the room. Otherwise, so basically, in phase 1, Beckon will pull you towards the center of the room. And if you do make it towards the center of the room, then you will get stuck in one of the bubbles, similar to the bubbles that we saw in like Ashvin and stuff like that. So you're going to need to make sure that you're towards the edge of the room. We had somebody calling out Beckon timing. It seemed like it was not correct in Bigwigs from what we were.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fixed by the time. I bet it's probably fixed now even.
Yeah,
there have been a bunch of Bigwigs updates. Yeah,
but yeah, so we were kind of just like pray that we didn't get beckoned in phase 1 or whatever. But
you can also get life gripped.
Phase 1. That's a good point.
Yeah, we had like 5 priests in our heroic run, so we would just call for grips if we got caught by beckon and we're too close to where we were being beckoned.
One of our shamans accidentally stayed in ghost wolf form and instantly ran into the middle.
Yeah, there's also this mechanic with beckon where like if you're close to other people when it's cast, you'll move faster when you get beckoned.
Oh,
yeah,
really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
okay.
It's called jealousy.
That's interesting, dude. Yeah, like you said, there's so many just like,
the boss is like there's just so much going on. But yeah, other than that, phase 1. So the Hulk comes in from the middle of the room, and you need to kill it. It can be stunned exactly 1 time. Theoretically, we found it was bugged and we could actually stun it multiple times, but theoretically it should only be stunnable once, so you're going to want to hit it with a nice long stun. A perfect stun for this is a 5 combo point between the eyes from an Outlaw Rogue, or a 6 combo point between the eyes if they're playing Deeper Stratagem, which maybe they will be. That'll stun it for a really long time and make it take 10% increased damage. You want to make sure you're not using a short stun on this thing, though. Like if you do that, then you're just going to cause it to become CC immune. And
if you were a Fury Warrior, if you charge it, you are trolling because it roots.
Yep. So don't charge this thing. Don't apply any CC to this except for the 1 CC because then it'll get infuriated and be unCCable. And basically the Hulk spawns in the middle of the room and will run to one of the outer runes and we'll start just ground pounding there, which is going to take away rune integrity and also do damage to the whole raid. So you need to make sure that it's pretty easy on heroic at least to stop this thing from getting any channel of ground pound off. If you hit it with a nice full stun right at the start and switch damage onto it. In heroic, we were finding that there was a DPS check we could make that stopped a second Hulk from spawning. Whereas if we just barely missed this, we would have to deal with one during the first intermission, and that was kind of annoying. So be aware of that, depending on what your group's DPS is looking like. But yeah, other than that, there's really not too much going on in the first phase. Just 2 ads that you kill. They're going to need to be tanked in such a way that they either can or can't see each other, depending on whether they have longing or the other one.
Yep, exactly. I know what you're referring to.
Painful memories.
I don't know what the name of that is.
They either have
them see one another.
They either have painful memories, which is like, oh no, if we see each other, we have to relive painful memories. So you have to tank them so that there's line of sight between them. And there are 3 different line of sight pillars or a console in this fight that you can use to break line, or longing, which is that they need to actually be able to see each other. Otherwise, they'll get the same powerful haste and attacks or haste and damage buff.
Might I add that those pillars kind of suck?
Yeah, they certainly do. This room is pretty awkward. Like there's massive amounts of spots where 2 people will be out of line of each other. So that is a serious increase to the difficulty of this fight that is kind of hard to see.
Yeah, the room is also like not very large. It's really awkward. Just like the nooks and crannies of the room will just like line of sight you randomly. Like anything to do with the console, you were just like perma line of sighted on accident. And you're just like, please stop, no more moving the boss. Yeah, this is the every end boss like Bod and Oldir as well of this expansion of these big tiers. The room has been part of the encounter as well, right? I think that's something that we can definitely expect going forward, is that end bosses are just going to have
encounter rooms that matter.
That's a really good point, actually. I didn't think about that. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then we got the intermission. So basically, you're going to end up getting a decree. It's basically, there's a stack decree, there's a move decree. What was it, like March or something?
Yeah, so
there's a solo decree.
There's you can either be told to stack or be by yourself. So stack or spread. Mm-hmm. There's soak or don't soak. There are these arcane orbs that you either get a decree that says you need to soak one, or you get a decree that says you can't soak one. And then there's also move or stand still. So you can get one per player on normal, but on heroic you can get multiple. And on mythic, presumably you're going to get one of each category. Yeah.
Yep.
So you'll be on heroic. You might be like solo move or group soak, and you have to do those two things at the same time.
But you cannot get conflicting ones. That is
you'll never get move, and so there's basically the three categories, right? There's movement, soaking, and stacking, and you'll get told to either do or not do that thing. And on mythic, you're going to get told something about each of those three things and have to do it all at the same time, which is going to be awesome. And we'll have to see how that strat develops. On heroic, it's basically like, okay, all of your solo soakers go soak an orb each, and each of your and then all of the group soakers go soak one orb, and then there will be solo movers running around the outside of the room. There will be a group standstill person that somebody will need to go stand on, and that's the main gist of that intermission. Pretty cool. Though. Looking forward to it.
Said something about move, soak, stack combos. Oh lord, dude, I don't want to deal with that.
Wait, move, soak, stack.
Yeah.
Oh no.
That's gonna be awful.
Yeah. Move, soak, stack. How are you gonna do that? That sounds impossible. I guess
it's like rubbing your. It's like patting your head and rubbing your belly.
Yeah, there's just no way to be done. It's never been done before successfully.
Impossible.
Yeah, mathematically impossible. Okay, so you do this first intermission. I guess you could just run in a circle around the soak spot within a group. Yeah, and it's not. Yeah, okay, yeah. So it's not too bad.
Obnoxious, is what it is.
It's really not that bad. It's not that bad. I was thinking you wouldn't be able to stand in the same orb, but if you could just stand in the same orb and just go in a tight little circle and you'll be fine. Then it's a-okay. Nothing to worry about. So phase 2, Azshara comes and starts fighting you directly. The middle rune, which used to not be active, gets empowered. So now all 4 runes are around, but the middle one is actually a different rune. Instead of starting at full energy and going down, it starts at 0 energy and goes up. This ward isn't a binary thing. It's not either on or off. The more power it has, the more damage Azshara does and everything. So you need to make sure that you just keep this thing at 0 power at all times. That's the kind of the first priority among runes, is just keeping this thing uncharged.
Yeah. So basically, you need to make sure that your runes are stable. The yellow runes are stable. And then you need to soak down the blue rune, because so on heroic, at least the tanks can probably tank up to like 75% of that rune being fully charged. I know that we aggressively soaked down the blue one, but as long as your yellow wards are stable, then you're probably good to soak down the blue one. You just kind of have to micromanage it and making sure that you're rotating everybody through and getting them stacks with the debuff. Like on heroic, you probably just have everybody at like 4 to 5 stacks. You're probably okay. Of course, that's going to be 50% reduced health, so you have to be kind of careful from some of the ambient damage, but you should be fine.
Yeah, I made a weak aura for our guild because we were having some difficulty keeping everybody here, so I made a weak aura that just put it on your screen in big letters. It said "Soak, idiot" if you didn't have any stacks during this fight.
I need that.
Yeah, no, I actually think that's the one weak aura that everybody needs is just that one, and then you're good. Okay. So yeah, Azshara comes down. She'll always drain or empower whichever ward is closest to her. So you want to make sure you're tanking her near a ward that is not about to be in too much trouble. And yeah, you can keep moving her around the room to prevent her from empowering or from being near the wrong ward. Here she'll cast Beckon, but you'll be dragged towards her instead of towards the middle of the room. So the range need to just get away from her. One interesting bug with Beckon that I've discovered is that it actually locks in the location that you're being pulled towards on the start of the Beckon cast, not at the end. So Azshara is one of the bosses. Azshara is one of the bosses that casts while moving. Like she can keep moving and meleeing and everything while she's casting. I think. I don't know about meleeing. I'm not a tank, but she can keep moving at least while casting. So and Beckon is a pretty long cast, so you need to make sure that you get away from where she was when she started casting it, not where she is when she finishes it. Then she also does some AoE damage. There's some tank mechanics. There's Arcane Burst, where these players will get a debuff, and they'll need to line of sight everybody and get dispelled. And at the otherwise they'll hit everybody within line. So basically, just them and a healer will go behind a pillar, and you'll dispel it. And that's all you have to do. It's not the end of the world if a couple people get hit by this AoE, but you don't want to hit the whole raid. There's another line of sight mechanic, Arcane Detonation, where Azshara will just get to 100 energy, and then she'll cast a 5-second thing that will hit everybody. Because it doesn't actually seem like it's that much damage if you look at the tooltip, right? But this is actually enough damage to kill people when they have stacks of the Drained Soul. So you need to make sure you line her when she casts this thing, or else it'll kill you. If you are caught, you can probably survive it with a defensive, though. So, use those instead of dying.
So something that's also important to note about the Arcane Detonation is that while it can also get dispelled by a healer, you need to make sure that the other person with the Arcane Detonation isn't in line with the first person who's getting dispelled. So you need to stagger stagger how it ends up working out. Or alternatively, you can have both people being line of sight on 2 separate line of sight points and just timing out.
Because there are
multiple
pillars.
It also explodes.
Yeah,
because if it times out, it also explodes, which you're fine. But it's just like how you want to end up dealing with it. So
maybe timing out is the best way. Like if you time out, then you don't have to commit a healer's time and resources to doing it.
Well, because you would have to commit 2 healers' time. You can actually just probably dispel one really quickly, and then
let the other time out. And then that way you could use the same spot. I'm sure there will be different ways.
There's gonna be some like best way of doing it. Like overall, that mechanic is not that bad though.
This one looks like one of the multiple right answers mechanics here, where just any plan will probably work for it. Okay, then there's some ad spawns. These waves of ads will spawn and run towards the middle rune and try and sacrifice themselves to empower it. There's 12 ads will spawn, or 1 big ad. The 12 ads, we had our entire raid run the essence of the Focusing Iris pretty much, and just once the 12 ads got to the middle, we AoE stunned them and just cast our essence of the Focusing Iris and killed them all. That was really cool.
Yeah. You guys all use Focusing Iris to kill them? Hold on.
Yeah, hang on. Let me go find a clip for you and show you this thing, because
while you're finding the clip, the way we didn't use this bullshit cheesy Focusing Iris thing that they use. We let them get to the middle, then we would like Ring of Peace them, Shining Force, Typhoon, Thunderstorm them back off the middle of the rune, and we would just like multi-dot and like just kind of AoE them down. We didn't.
Okay.
All right. I guess we didn't think about using Focusing Iris like this.
Prepare to be amazed, Tentacles, of the massive brain of Poetry Club. US Tichondrius recruiting, by the way.
What's your website link?
We don't have one. Find us on WoW Progress. Okay, here it is.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, yep. There it goes. The entire raid just nukes them down with the Focusing Iris. I'll put this clip link in the if you're just listening to this on audio, I'll link the clip in there too. But basically, just 10 of us use our essence of the Focusing Iris, and the entire set of ads goes down. So very much would recommend using that.
Focusing Iris is also really good on that fight just because of the ads that spawn. Not those ads, not the pad ads, the other ads that spawn periodically.
Yeah,
you get pretty good 2 targets with damage.
Focusing Iris is just competitive-ish on single target, and as soon as you get to 2 targets, you're happy. And if you're hitting 12 targets, you're just delighted. So yeah, we were delighted. we had a good time, and I'm very sorry if we end up getting this thing nerfed, because it is so much fun. It seems like it's a pretty likely thing to get nerfed, because it is.
I mean,
I've just been having.
You could just Purification Protocol RNG annihilate the mobs.
True, maybe, yeah. True, maybe. I think Purification Protocol doesn't annihilate boss mobs, but maybe
they annihilate non-lieutenant mobs, and those are definitely non-lieutenant mobs because you can see them.
Okay. All right, yeah. So those are the ads. You just need to kill them before they reach the middle. Then there's another intermission where there's also like you just have to deal. You have to do the decrees again, and there's also Azshara around there. So you can still DPS Azshara, but she's doing RP. So just attack her while you're doing the decrees. Easy enough. Then in phase 3, she also starts moving around which ward is which. You just got to make sure you keep looking at the little interface and are playing around the wards effectively. And
is it the vehicle control window, or is it part of the UI, or like what exactly is the thing?
It is part of the UI. I don't know if it's the vehicle control window. Maybe, yeah.
Okay, I have no idea what
it does kind of show up in the same spot as that, so it very much could be. This is where the jealousy thing on Beckon starts to come into play, is phase 3. So this is where you need to start spreading for Beckon in addition to just being far away from her. And then, yeah, otherwise just all the same stuff is going on, except there are some ads now. Two ads will spawn on 2 different wards, and then a third melee ad will spawn just kind of in the middle of the room. The ads will start trying to drain the ward, but it's interruptible, and they'll start casting Chain Lightning, which is also interruptible, so just interrupt these things as much as you can. And then they will also cast a Crystalline Shield, which we believe to be on a timer, not health-based like the Wowhead guide here thinks. And the Crystalline Shield will make them immune to damage and everything, and the only way you can remove the Crystalline Shield is with a Charged Spear from a Loyal Myrmidon. So Charged Spear is from the Loyal Myrmidon. It's also present in Phase 1 from the Melee Naga in Phase 1, I believe. Charged Spear is a pretty misunderstood ability. The Dungeon Journal isn't doing this thing any favors. So let me explain exactly how Charged Spear works. It is sourced from whatever is casting it, and it will travel in a line from them towards whichever person was targeted by Charged Spear. It'll do damage to anybody in that line, a small amount of damage, like 30k or something, so not a huge deal. And if it touches any of the ads, it will break their Crystalline Shields. But if it touches the console or the pillars, so any of the terrain in the room, if that line touches that, it will explode for huge damage on the whole raid, like 150k. And that will be pretty catastrophic because everybody has pretty low max health. So you need to make sure that you have it instead sail out of the room. And if it sails out of the room, it will instead explode way out in the distance and only do small raid-wide damage. So yeah, you just need to make sure that your line from the Myrmidon hits any ads that have Crystalline Shield that you need to remove and doesn't hit the pillar. And it's a secondary goal is to also make sure there aren't too many people stacked up in it.
Not gonna lie, did not know how that works, so thank you.
Yeah, it's not it's a mechanic that is pretty weird. So
I only knew about that it removed the Crystalline Shield. So
yeah, okay. Definitely make sure that it doesn't hit the terrain. That's a big thing with it too. And what that means also is that you need to make sure that the Myrmidon is in a place where it can hit the thing with the shield. Like there's line of sight between it and the thing with the shield that doesn't hit one of the terrains. So that is important too.
Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So yeah, all you do is if a Crystalline Shield goes off, we were actually making a DPS check where we were killing the first ad before it shielded, and then we would just break the shield on the second ad and kill it with before it got a second shield off. And that was all there was to this phase. Then it moves into the last phase, which is either when both Tide Mistresses are defeated or at 45% health, which you probably want to make that about the same time. You don't want to have to deal with phase 4 mechanics for too long, so you don't want to kill the Tide Mistresses too early before 45% health, but you also don't want to deal with phase 4 mechanics and the Tide Mistresses at the same time. So try and have those two events overlap. In phase 4, she gets all the same stuff, pretty much, except there are some new mechanics going on. There's nether portals, which will target a person, like a ranged player, and will deny the whole area of ground around them for the rest of the fight. So you need to make sure that you keep them away from any wards that you need to charge, or the Titan console, or the rest of your group. The way we did this is we kind of stacked towards the edge of the room in a ranged group, and we just kind of moved circularly around the room as each of these spawned. Pretty easy thing to do. You generally don't want to gunk up the middle of the room. We decided to instead gunk up the edges of the room. Then there's also zappy line piercing gazes from N'Zoth that will come from the edges of the room and just cross across the room. Pretty easy to dodge. You just have to make sure you're looking for them. Otherwise, you're going to die. And then there's also, the final main mechanic of the last phase is the Titan console, which is, it'll basically, she's going to send these charges to the Titan console, and you have a limited amount of time in order to remove the charges from the console. Otherwise, they will all zap about 42 seconds later. So you basically get next to this Titan console and you'll get an extra action button. You can press it and you'll release one of the charges to deal raid-wide damage to everybody. And you need to make sure that you release all or all but one of these before they expire, and then that'll release all that are left on the console. And you can see them actually floating, these little balls floating around the console. They're the same animation as if you do islands, like when you kill a rare in an island and the little Azurite thing drops that you can stand on to heal everybody, it's the same art as that. floating around the console. So that's how you can see how many are left in it. So you go stay next to the console. It should be probably a healer doing this because they can click when the raid is able to, is in a good position to take a burst of damage. They go stand there. They'll use their extra action button and it'll zap the whole raid. Also, whenever you use this, there will be a random effect. Either the person using the console will get a dot, or a nearby Rune of Power or ward will be drained for 30% of its power, which can be pretty catastrophic, so you need to be careful of that one. Be ready to top it up immediately. Or a random DPS will gain a 40-second buff, which makes spellcast instant, increases haste by 50%, and increases their resource regeneration as well, and then they'll die at the end of that 40 seconds. So pretty huge here. Making spellcast instant can be pretty big for some specs. So if you get this right in the last 40 seconds of the fight, that's great news for your parse. Congratulations.
Big damn.
Yeah, big damn. And yeah, that's, all there is to it. It's important to note that this is on a random DPS, so you don't need to have specific DPS who want to get the Essence of Azeroth using the console. Just anybody using the console will cause this to go on random DPS. There's no way to game it. And that's the Queen Azshara fight.
Oh my god. Okay, so somebody asked in chat, how many mechanics is too much mechanics? And I think, while we're not in the Q&A, I think that's appropriate to address right now. Dratnos, do you think this is too many mechanics? Because I personally think this is just like...
I think this is awesome.
I think this is like an obscene amount of mechanics.
It's like there's a bunch of easy bosses on the way here. This is like, the mechanics are spread into different phases.
There's so many of them that just don't matter, though. Like, I don't get it. There's so many mechanics that just don't matter on the side.
Yeah, I think that I think it's okay if the last boss fight of the tier is extremely complicated. Yeah. I think that's fine. A lot of these mechanics, they're really cool. A lot of them are. I don't know. I don't mind this. I think that yes, it's an information overload, and yes, if you're doing this in a pug on heroic, it's going to be brutal. And they're whereas pugging heroic Unot was not brutal. So that's a contrast, and maybe it's bad for something to be this complicated on heroic, but at least for me, I'm excited about this fight on Mythic with this amount of difficulty and complexity. I'm looking forward to doing this much stuff. But yeah, you're right. It's a lot to keep in your head. I don't know. It only seems like there's in a couple weeks we'll know all these mechanics, right? It's the main thing is you just kind of right now we're learning all this at once, right? And we're trying to learn 50 mechanics at the same time. And learning 50 mechanics at once maybe isn't fun, but doing 50 mechanics at once you know them is fun. So that's my perspective on it. Okay. Let's move on to the next thing. I guess, yeah. Mythic difficulty. We have no idea what this fight is going to look like on Mythic, but I am expecting a nice, long, complicated Mythic fight. Do you think there's going to be a Mythic-only phase on this fight? I don't think so.
I hope not.
I mean, maybe an Azoth phase of some kind, but I don't think, I think with this many phases that already have this many mechanics, I think this is just going to be a Helya or Unot style fight where it's the same mechanics, just brutally hard on Mythic. But yeah, before I knew there were this many phases in the fight, I would have guessed that Azshara would have had a Mythic-only phase, so maybe that'll just be... Maybe the time of Mythic-only phases is past. The last time it was, what, Gul'dan? That was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
So maybe if not this one,
maybe was
Argus was just a modified. Yeah, okay. Argus is kind of a Mythic only phase. Red phase Argus. Yeah, okay. Red phase Argus is close enough to Mythic only phase. Sure, I'll count it. Anyways, that's been our quick guide to Eternal Palace. I hope you've found this to be useful. We're always looking for feedback for the show, so if there's a way that you see that we could do this better or differently or whatever, let us know in Twitch chat if you're here watching live, or in the YouTube comments, in the iTunes comments, or on Twitter or whatever. We'll see, and we'll adapt for next year how we do this type of show. But let's move on to our final topic for this week, where we are going to talk a little bit about dungeons, because of course we are also, it's not only a new raid, there are also Beguiling is now active. Tells, you said you've only done one Beguiling dungeon. That's true, right?
Well, I did someone's PTR, but yeah, I've only done one on live.
One on live? Okay. One thing is that there has been a beguiling nerf recently in the past couple days. From the time of recording this, the Void Touched Emissaries got nerfed so that they apply a debuff to the player instead of a buff to themselves, causing the damage taken to be increased from that emissary. So the Void Touched Emissary is a lot more doable now than it was before. It used to be that you really want to skip these things. I've done my experience with the affix. I did a Toldagor 20, which we couldn't complete. Then I depleted a Toldagor 13 first day. Then a couple days ago, I did like a Taldazar 15, King's Rush 14, and we timed both of those. And that group was like, there was a bunch of people. A bunch of people were in that group had not done high keys before last season as well, so that was really cool. It seemed like we were really had a good thing going, and a Taldazar like tyrannical the fortified Grievous was pretty rough in there. So. On 15.
We 2-healed our 19 Ataldazar for Volcall because
Volcall is really not messing around this with Grievous and the buffs.
Volcall is pretty rough. He's not a 2-minute he doesn't kill himself after 2 minutes anymore. Now he's like alive for forever. So that's that was rough.
And then I also did like a Temple 12 with Trell, who's not here right now, but is another host of this podcast. We 2-chested that, so the beguiling basically. After the first couple days, like the first day, everybody was just dying to it, but now I think people are starting to learn the strategies to dealing with this thing and starting to actually complete keys of high levels again. And also everybody has gear from Heroic, and so our power level has gone up pretty substantially. I guess. What do you think about beguiling Tentacles now that it's been out for a little bit?
So the Void Emissary change is pretty good. So basically you're able to eat one and then dip out a line of sight for the second one, then eat another one, then dip out a line of sight, and you're never going to really die. That seems pretty reasonable. Overall, it seems like it's going to be really rough for your tank still, just in general. Like the Void Touched Emissary and the Emissary of the Tides both seem like they're like almost unreasonably challenging for some parts. Like there are 3 Void Touched Emissaries in the Seth Rallis Eyeball Gauntlet room. Like, what?
Yeah, that one was fun. We killed those. We killed Void Emissaries, and then we just grouped up all of the Faithless, and I used my Essence of the Focusing Iris, and I did like more than 2 million damage with one Essence of the Focusing Iris cast in that place. So. That was good gameplay that I really enjoyed. But the Void Touched Emissaries in there were definitely rough. The emissaries in the eyeball room, I don't know. That's kind of one of the cool things about these emissaries is that they really are contextual. Like Emissary of the Tides in some packs is just brutal, right? Like you really need to CC it and immediately pull everything out of its effect. And then there's some packs like in Temple of Sethralis, the Static Charge Dervishes that don't change at all by having an Emissary of the Tides in them. So all of these emissaries, really, it matters what they're next to, and that'll affect the plan that you use to deal with them and how many resources you have to commit to dealing with them and whether or not you have to skip them or can choose to fight them. So I don't know. I like beguiling. I've been enjoying beguiling keys. It's been a puzzle. Like every time we come up to a pack and there's an emissary in it, it's been a fun puzzle where I really feel rewarded for coming up with a good answer to what are we supposed to do about this stupid emissary here. Except in Toldagor, where they don't give count. They're bugged right now in Toldagor, and I think Siege as well, to not give any count, so that's lame. But in the other dungeons where they give count, it's pretty fun. I don't know. I like it. I've been having a good time with beguiling. I don't know. It really it does slow down the dungeon, and it means that you can't just like chain pull in the same way that you could before. By the way, here's the article that we're looking at. It'll be in the description and in Twitch chat as well.
Apparently that's not the updated one.
Okay, is there a new one?
Yeah, I just posted it in our document. It's a different one.
Okay, ignore the one I just put. Here's the new one, which will be in this one will be in the descriptions. But yeah, we have a scaling chart here. So that basically scaling for dungeons has completely changed in multiple different ways. There's been not only a change to the base level of a Mythic 0, which then cascades through all the M+ levels, but there's also been a change to the amount of extra health and damage that you get per keystone level. That's increased from a cumulative 8% to a cumulative 10%, which means that basically the difference between a 17 and an 18 is much higher this season than it was last season. and as the difference between a 25 and a 26 is way, way, way higher this season than it was last season. So that, yeah, this chart is actual numbers that, like the number on the left you see here, season 2 modifier percent, and then season 3 modifier percent, including 30% base scaling relative to season 2. This basically means that like these are the same numbers, right? These are actually cross comparable numbers. So like a +4 is plus 17%, whereas a +4 now is plus 57%, and those are actually comparable numbers because it's factoring in that change to the base difficulty as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a good chart to show you what a X feels like this season. So like you can see that a 9 this season has the same scaling as a 14 did last season, or a 14 this season has the same scaling that a 20 did last season. And that's a useful thing about this chart. One thing you have to keep in mind as well is that like, you know, a 10 has Beguiling, whereas before it would have had Reaping. So that's a big difference as well. And I think it's fair to say that Beguiling is, even when we know how to handle it, it'll probably be harder than Reaping. And right now, it's way, way, way harder and slower than Reaping. Because
where do you think we cap out dungeon level wise?
Well, I mean, okay, you have to, if you're just looking at this chart and you look at this chart and you're like, okay, we can't go higher than a 20 because a 20 is the same as a 28 was last patch. You have to factor in that we're also getting 30 item levels, and that like over the course of the next couple months, we're getting huge amounts of power from 30 item levels, from extra essences, and from extra, you know, Azurite trait power and all that stuff. So I think we'll probably end up capping out in roughly the same spot as we were before. I would say 25s. I don't like. I would be surprised if a 27 was done this season.
Man, I still think like 20. I think 23 seems like it's going to be like about the upper bound for me, but like I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe 25s will get done again.
Like we're going to get.
I think a lot of
we have a huge amount of power.
Kind of got
like locked behind these essences. The essences are really, really strong.
Like what? So I guess we get an extra miner from 65, right?
Yeah, just the essences we have right now. Once we're using them, like, I mean, they get more power as our neck goes up.
Okay, never mind. You're right.
Yeah, we're getting huge amounts of stam. We're also just getting huge amount of stats from getting mythic gear. 30 item levels is supposed to be about a 30% increase to your character's power level, right? So that kind of offsets with the 30% base scaling difference, right? And that plus the fact that we're getting these new essences. So yeah, I think that by the end of the season we'll see similar keys. I don't know if we'll see a 26 done this season. Okay. And last season a 27 was definitely doable if it was Fortified Toltagor, which I definitely don't think we'll be getting into that range. But I don't know. I mean, like we're already seeing like 17s and 18s and stuff being done, right? This time at the start of last season, that was the same level keys that were being done, and then it just kind of slowly grew over the season. So yeah, I think we'll see. I don't think I'm not too worried about capping out too low. Now the fact that it's scaling more per level than last season, that is definitely true. So maybe you're right. Maybe it'll be a couple levels lower than it was this season or last season. Mm-hmm. All right, that is. Do you have anything left on Beguiling, or are we about done here? Do we ready to move into questions and answers?
I think we're good.
Let's go into questions and answers then. Seen any good Q&A from the chat?
No, but while we are getting some questions, I had a question that I wanted to pose. Is the Eternal Palace going to be a one boss instance again? What do you think? Because like in general, just by like looking at like how many boss mechanics, like just like the complexity of all the fights and stuff like that, it seems like Azshara's Eternal Palace seems like it might be a one boss instance again, with Zakul being like a 60 pull fight.
So yeah, you when you say one boss instance, you mean like Battle of Zorlor was, where Jaina was the only fight where anybody spent any serious amount of time. Yes. I think it's tough to like make a mythic prediction based on what heroic looks like. Like I think people are pretty quick to jump on like what a heroic boss fight looks like to determine what the mythic fight will look like. But like Unot was really, really easy on heroic, right? And it was way harder than anybody expected on mythic. A bunch of Battle of Zorlor fights seemed like they could have been real fights on heroic, and they just ended up being undertuned, right? So I think that tuning and all that stuff that goes into mythic is. I think the one prediction that I feel confident in making is that Azshara is not going to be an easy end boss. Like Azshara is going to be the real deal, just based on number of mechanics and based on her importance lore wise. I think they're gonna tune her pretty high. But we're just coming off of Crucible of Storms, a pretty high, like, Blizzard kind of has this pendulum effect where they kind of go back and forth between overtuning and undertuning stuff, right? And we just came off of Crucible, which was very overtuned, potentially, like, or at least the perception was that it was very hard, and so maybe they're going to be pulling back in the opposite direction and undertuning everything. I don't know. I think that basically I'm hesitant to make a prediction based on just like the number of mechanics or how hard things are in Heroic, because we've seen both of those be pretty poor predictors of how hard Mythic has been in the past.
Or it could be, like Sasara was saying, in another Tomb of Sargeras, where we have multi-hundred pull bosses in the same instance with
Fallen Avatar, yeah.
With Ashvin, Zakul, and Shara all being over 200 pulls apiece. I could definitely see that. Us living in a world where that ends up happening, and we ramp through just an 8 to 10 week progression cycle. That I don't know how I really feel about that, but I mean, it definitely could happen.
Yeah, so you have you're gonna the longer the time is for you, right? The more you're gonna have to do casting of the Race for World first, right?
That's a good point. That trip might get extended if the tier lasts. Oh god, dude, I hope it doesn't last like 3 weeks or something. That would be wild, man.
Yeah, that's kind of a fun part of it. Of course, Tettles, why don't you? I guess you haven't had a good opportunity. Why don't you plug this Race for World first that you're casting?
Yeah, so I'm actually casting the method version of the Race for World first. There are two versions. It's gonna be like there's a Red Bull one that has pieces and limit, and then some associated guilds, and there's a method one that has method, and then some associated guilds. I'm casting the method one. It is in Germany, in Krefeld, at the Tate TV studio. So
yeah, you're flying out soon,
that's
right?
Gonna start. Yeah, I fly out tomorrow. Tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Very cool. Sistara asks, at Tettles, who do you predict will get World first?
Oh shit. Well,
this is a pretty easy method answer for you, I think. I'll give you the cheat code for what you're supposed to say here.
Okay, so hear me out. Vodka with a Z recently renamed to Vodka, so that means that they're going for World first. So I'm going to go with Vodka. Okay.
Okay. All right. And they actually could get World first if the fights are mechanically difficult.
They don't day raid first day, unfortunately.
Well, no, but like if they got a really high ranking on Cabal, right? So if the fights are like that, then maybe they could okay, if bosses 1 through 7 fall over instantly, and then boss 8 is like mechanically difficult but doable mathematically early, that could be Vodka. Like Vodka could swoop in and just do one of their classic Vodka like 50 pull bosses that everybody else takes 200 bosses on, and they could win.
Yeah, Vodka Sans Z, so world first.
World first. All right, good prediction. I like it. I'm rooting.
Bringing it home to NA.
Yeah, I'm also rooting for NA. I'll root for Limit though. That's where every time there's a world first, I go through this great ritual of rooting for Limit and then being sad a couple days later.
Oh, what the hell, Dratnos? That's lame. Wait a second.
I mean, that's what's happened the last like 6 tiers. It's true. Yeah. Now they have I'm Fired Up though, so that, as Sistara points out in chat. So how can they lose?
Good point. He is a nice Mormon boy.
Mm. All right, chat. Any further questions? Or somebody, hang on. There's a question I missed. Okay. Rathyeth asks, I don't know if you've talked about this, but what is your opinion on Operation Mechagon and when it hits Mythic Plus? Okay, so Operation Mechagon, we completely haven't talked about here. It's like an 8-boss dungeon. It's only available on Mythic 0, though, right now, and it won't be available in Mythic Plus for many months, like in the same way that Karazhan wasn't. I am not a fan of that part of it. I wish that it was coming to Mythic Plus soon, because I think it's really cool, and I would like to play it. By the time it comes to Mythic Plus, kind of the newness and excitement of it, I think will be... well, I guess once it comes to Mythic Plus, there will be another burst of excitement about it, so... it's going to be... it's already really hard on Mythic 0 in a lot of spots. There's a lot of hard mechanics. One cool thing about the dungeon is it has hard modes too, where you can actually fight each boss. Like if you do something specific to it, much like Ulduar had, you can fight each boss in a harder way that has extra mechanics. And then there's a reward for doing all 8 bosses that way. And without any deaths, actually, you get a rank 4 essence for doing that. So pretty cool little thing there.
Yep.
I love the hard modes. And I also like the dungeon as a whole. I've liked all the bosses in it and the mechanics. So yeah, big fan. How about you, Tettles? Have you done Mechagon, Operation Mechagon?
Yes, I did actually do. I did Operation Mechagon. So I think I'm in a similar vein with you. I think some of the mechanics on the bosses and the trash are a bit overtuned, and like the star was saying in the chat, there might need to get hit with a swift 90% nerf on some of the mechanics, just for them to be Mythic Plus viable, just because of how infinite scaling works with Mythic Plus and stuff like that. However, on this Mythic Zero difficulty that we see it currently on, I think the dungeon feels really good, and I like a lot of parts of it, but I can see a lot of it being problematic for Mythic Plus. I would assume it ends up getting addressed before it comes out for Mythic Plus. So I think I'm looking forward to it, and it also having two wings, Robot City and whatever Junkyard.
Yeah, it's like Karazhan, right? It's gonna have upper and lower.
Yeah, upper and lower Mechagon. I think it's pretty cool. I enjoy the dungeon pretty much.
Yeah, it is kind of reminiscent of Karazhan as well, where like the first one, the lower equivalent, the Junkyard, is kind of like open, a lot of trash, and the later one is like a lot of bosses and not too much trash, kind of small little gauntlets of trash. So pretty reminiscent actually of the entire Karazhan experience, and then you could kind of equate the hard modes to Nightbane runs as well. Okay, I guess that is gonna, and yeah, unless you see any further questions or answers, I think that is all we've got for this week. Next week we should be joined once again by Trell, probably
50-50 on if I'm here or not, so I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, Tentacles, you're going to be casting the Race for World first. So
yeah,
if you
I'm
are
being Crefeld, I don't know if I'm going to be here or not. So I guess we'll find out, won't we? We'll know what my
we'll see once you get your casting schedule if you're free at this time slot, or if you're free, we might. I guess we'd consider maybe moving a couple of hours if it frees you up. So we'll see.
Yeah. So check us out on Twitter at Titanforge WoW. We'll post an update in regards to that if we are in fact moving the timing or something like that. So make sure to check us out there.
Yep. Remember to if like wherever you're watching this, if one of the best way that you can support our show if you enjoy the show is to like leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you're watching this, YouTube. Give us thumbs up, that kind of stuff. Tell your friends about us, like us on Twitter. All that kind of stuff goes a long way to helping us grow this podcast here. So I really appreciate it if you enjoy the show. If you do that, but yeah, that's going to be all for us this week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Later, gamers.